Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavatir Naishtiki Om Agyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Mukham karoti vachanam bangam langyate girim yat kripatamam vande Shri Gurudina taranam parmanandam madhavam. Last week or Monday, last session we had discussed, we had begun to discuss Sarga, and we were kind of halfway through it. So hopefully in today's discussion, we will finish Sarga, start with the secondary creation Visarga. Let's see, I kind of doubt if we'll be able to finish Visarga this in this session. And then there is the summation, which basically is summarizing all the 4 presentations that we have gone through, just in a concise at a high level. It's kind of like stepping back and looking at the forest for the trees. So where were we in Sarga? We were at the point, or let's begin, that Sarga begins with Lord Sankarshan expanding into Mahavishnu. Mahavishnu, then he lies in one corner of the creation, and he lies on the water of the Karna Sagar, the causal ocean, along with Ramadevi, his eternal consort. Then 2 personalities manifest to assist him. Shambhu, who is an expansion of Sadashiv appearing through Mahavishnu, and Durga Devi, who is the external energy of Krishna. So Mahavishnu then does 2 things. He breathes and then he glances. So when he breathes, unlimited universes, or what Prabhupada describes as the spiritual seeds of the universes, emanate from the pores of his body. These are essentially the material aspects of the universe. In Brahma Samhita, Bhaktisiddhanta says that they are covered by the Panchabhutas. And Maya Devi accepts them and amalgamates them, and this becomes Pradhan. So even though they emanated as individual seeds of the universe, in Pradhan, they are all undifferentiated. And Pradhan is essentially the material source of the creation. So we say the Pradhan is 24 elements, which means that eventually 24 elements will emanate from the Pradhan. But at this point, it is undifferentiated. And it is passive. So it is just matter that is lying. Now, in addition to breathing, Mahavishnu glances at his consort, Ramadevi. Ramadevi takes that glance and hands it over to her expansion, Durga Devi. And the glance is under the control of Shambhu, the second personality who had manifested. So the glance has 3 things in it: Kal, Karma, and Swabhav. So Kal is time personified by Lord Shiva. So that is why Lord Shiva is considered to be the predominating deity of destruction, because the function of time is to destroy everything. And the other two are the Swabhav, which is the ability to change matter from one mode to another, and Karma, which is the resultant of the past activities and desires. So Swabhav and Karma do not exist by themselves, but they are essentially carried by the Jiva. So the glance of Mahavishnu carries Jiva and Shiva. Shiva as time and Jiva as Karma and Swabhav, and the glance impregnates the Pradhan. So with the entry of time and desires and Swabhav, the catalyst, the Pradhan changes and becomes Mahatattva. So Mahatattva is the modes now acting on the Pradhan. So we see that the Pradhan first differentiated into the, based on the mode, in the mode of goodness it became Mahatattva, in the mode of passion it became Sutra Tattva, and in the mode of ignorance it became Ahankar. And then Ahankar was further acted upon by the three modes. In the mode of goodness, it becomes Jnana Shakti, which includes the mind and the Devas, the elemental Devas, the Adi Devas. In the mode of passion, it becomes Kriya Shakti, which includes intelligence and the Jnanendriyas and the Karmendriyas. And in the mode of ignorance, it becomes Dravya Shakti, which includes the Pancha Mahabhutas and the Panch Tanmatras. So now the Mahatattva has been differentiated. So we had reached this point, and we will resume our discussion from the fact that the Mahatattva, because of the successive action of the modes, has now differentiated into the 24 elements. So I'll need to share the screen. I should have actually done that sooner. Let's see. Share screen. Okay. So we are at this stage where within the Mahatattva, and like I said, the nomenclature could be a little confusing, because I had said that Mahatattva is actually Pradhan in the mode of goodness, and in the mode of ignorance, it is actually Ahankar. But notionally, we call this also Mahatattva. Sometimes we call it Prakriti. So we will go with that convention that this is being called Mahatattva. Because Prabhupada says that predominantly the mode of ignorance is strong. So and I'm not sure if there's a quantitative representation, but the understanding is that the predominant portion of the Pradhan is becoming the Ahankar, and then the subsequent conversions there. So maybe that is one reason why it is also called Mahatattva, just because of the preponderance of the existence of the mode of ignorance. Okay, so we have these 24 elements that are in the differentiated state. So we have the Pancha Mahabhutas, earth, water, fire, air, ethers. Then we have the 5 Tanmatras, which is the qualities. Then we have the 5 Jnanendriyas and the 5 Karamendriyas. So these are the Chatur Panchams. And then we have the 4 Antakarnas, mind, intelligence, false ego, and Chitta. And we have gone through how these differentiate from the undifferentiated Pradhan. Now, in addition to that, we have the Devas also. So we have so we have these Devas, the Dig Devas, Vayu, Varun, Ashwini, that are responsible for the Gyanendriyas. And then we have these Adi Devas like Indra, Upendra, etc., who are responsible for the Karmendriyas. So all is present, but there is no activity. So they have reached the levels of transformation that they could, because of the actions of the modes, because of the way the material in the pradhan, they went through a certain level of transformation, and now they have reached this point where the elements are present in the differentiated state, the devas are present, but then it stops over here. Nothing is happening. So the elemental devas now begin to pray to Lord Vishnu, because it's their service to assist him in the process of creation. And seeing that the process of creation has stopped, they begin to pray to Lord Vishnu to assist them in or rather empower them to further do the creation. So Lord Vishnu, taken in by these prayers, he enters into the various elements of the Mahatattva, and because of that, the differentiated elements now begin to mix with each other. So a way to understand this transformation is that we plant a seed in the soil. So the soil is the undifferentiated tree. The tree is in the soil, because if you look at it, the tree does not come from anywhere else. It's only the soil that transforms into the tree. So when the tree has appeared, then we can say that the soil has now differentiated into the tree or into many trees. But the trees are now standing by themselves. If a person wants to cook a meal, then now he needs to take a tomato from one plant, a potato from another plant, and some other food from a third plant, and then mix them and prepare the meal. So the mixing is not the opposite of differentiation. The opposite of differentiation is amalgamation, which is not happening now. Now it's like in a pot you have the potatoes and the tomatoes and the cauliflower, and in order to prepare a meal, they need to be mixed with each other. So this is now the next stage of creation. So because of the glance and because of the entry of Mahavishnu into Mahatattva, we now have the creation of the Brahman. So separately they were unable to produce anything, but when the energy of the Lord entered, then now the Mahatattva splits into unlimited numbers of Brahmans. So if you remember earlier on when we were saying that the breath of Mahavishnu, there are unlimited number of universes. Those universes combine to become the Pradhan, and now the Mahatattva is differentiating into the universe. What had emanated from his body were the seeds, but now these are fully, I would not say fully functional, but they're the skeleton of the universe, the infrastructure of the universe. Now, how the identity of the seeds. So we know that there are some universes that are small, there are some that are big, because not all the universes are the same. It said that ours is one of the smallest universes. So there are some universes that are much, much bigger than ours. And they have different kinds of constituents also. So how this information is preserved is not clearly explained, or it is explained that by the will of Krishna. But this we can understand that those uh, Bhakti Siddhanta says the sperms of the universe. So those seeds of the universe that had been amalgamated now have gone through this transformation from Mahatattva to Pradhan, and the Brahmans are appearing. We see the same thing happens with the Jivas also, because Mahavishnu is also holding the Jivas within his body, but they are without the gross and subtle body. Now the gross body they lose in the material universe itself. When there is end of the creation, then they lose the gross body. Depending on the nature of the pralaya, it gets burned or washed away, whatever, but they lose the gross body. But they carry the subtle body. But that subtle body they lose when they enter into Mahavishnu. So they are existing in their pure spiritual form. Kapil Dev explains this in Sankhya in the 3rd canto, 27th chapter. So, but when these jivas reappear, they reappear with the same subtle body that they lost at the time of annihilation. How that happens again is the will of the Lord. So same thing is happening with the universes over here. So Pradhan became Mahatattva. Now Mahatattva has split into millions of Brahmans. The Brahmans are effulgent from outside. They are like golden eggs, because they're infused by the creative energy of the Lord. Now the Mahatattva is also effulgent, but for a different reason. The Mahatattva is effulgent because of the Jivas. Because remember, when the Lord glances, the Pradhan becomes the Mahatattva, and the glance carries the Jivas. The Brahman does not carry any Jivas. The Brahman is pure matter. So within the Brahman, there is complete darkness. But externally, it is effulgent because of the creative energy of the Lord. The Mahatattva is effulgent because of the Jivas. Because the Jivas are pure spirit soul, they are effulgent. And because there are unlimited Jivas in the material world, they all, when they enter the Pradhan, they light up the Mahatattva. So it becomes effulgent. Now, it is said that the Brahman is shaped like an egg, which is why it's called Brahma Anda. Anda is egg. It is shaped like an egg, and it has 7 layers around it, with each layer being 10 times thicker than the layer previous to it. So at the center, there is an empty space, which is blank. So this is the center of the Brahman, whereas there is nothing. But now we see that there are these 7 layers. Now, for practical reasons, they are being shown as the same. But we can understand that this layer is 10 times this, and so on. So the innermost layer is earth, and then it goes to the Panchabhutas, earth, water, fire, air, ether. Then we have false ego and Mahatattva. And in each layer is the subtle cause of the layer before it. So Mahatattva is the subtle cause of false ego. False ego is the subtle cause of ether, and so on. It's also mentioned that these layers are not devoid of life. In fact, the quality of life within these layers is far, far superior to that within the universe. In the Bhagavatamrita, it's explained that when Gopakumar, he was traveling out from, as part of his liberation, he was traveling out of the universe. So he crossed each of these layers. And he gives a brief description of the layers, that he sees fabulous mansions. He sees the Lord being worshipped opulently. Lord Vara is worshipped in the layer of earth, Lord Matsya in water, Surya Narayan in fire, Pradyumna in air, Aniruddha in ether, Sankarshan in false ego, and Vasudeva in the layer of Mahatattva. And outside this is the Pradhan. And in the Pradhan, Mohini Murti is being worshipped by Durga Devi. So when he actually crosses over, then he enters into Pradhan, and there he sees that Krishna's external energy is worshipping Krishna's bewildering energy. So Mohini Murti is Krishna's bewildering form. Mohini Murti is worshipping her. Now at this point, they are not there. So this is just mentioned over there for future understanding, that when the universe develops, they will come here. But the point is made that at this point, the universe is, or the Brahman is, completely devoid of any form of life. So in this way, innumerable Brahmans are created, and they're clustered together, appearing like atoms. And Prabhupada said they are like bubbles of foam that are clustered together, and they're floating on the causal ocean. So this is the material creation. That's why it is said there is no shore. The entire material creation is right within the waters of the causal ocean. And the point is made again that all this is coming from Krishna. And while the Brahmans are being created and destroyed, his abode is eternal. So once these Brahmans are created, then for over 1,000 years, they lay on the waters of the causal ocean in a lifeless state. Why lifeless? Because they are matter. All they have is nothingness in the middle, and the earth, water, fire, air, ether, and false ego and Mahatattva. That's all they have. So they're simply lying in a passive state. So then the Lord, he remembers, not that he forgets, but at this point, he acknowledges the desires of the Jivas to fulfill their perverted desires. Now, the Jivas are still within the Mahatattva. The Brahmans have been created, but the Jivas have not entered. They're still in the Mahatattva. So after 1,000 years, Mahavishnu, he expands. So just like there are millions of Brahmans, he expands into millions of Karbo-Daksha Vishnu. And he enters into each one of the Brahmans, carrying a portion of the Jivas along with him. So now this is the time that the Brahmans are becoming animated, because now they have the presence of Karbo-Daksha Vishnu, and they have the presence of the Jivas within Karbo-Daksha Vishnu. So Karbo-Daksha Vishnu is the super soul of each of the universe. Just like Mahavishnu is the super soul of the entire material creation. And he is worshipped. He is called Saharsa Murda or Saharsa Sirsa in the Pusha Shukta prayers. Saharsa Sirsa Purusha, Saharsa Pada, Saharsa Akhya. So the Pusha Shukta prayers are actually glorification of Mahavishnu. He is also known as Hiranyagarbha. That and Hiranyagarbha is a term that is used also to describe Brahma. It's also used to describe the Virat Purush, but it's also uh, uh, used to refer to Garbha-Daksha Vishnu. And as I mentioned, Antaryami or super soul of the material creation, the individual material creation. So he is the master of each and every universe and completely untouched by matter. So it's not that, so we say that Lord has nothing to do with matter. We see that is intimately interacting with matter. That the whole Pradhan is created from the body of Mahavishnu. Within each universe, Garbha-Daksha Vishnu is entering. Within each atom, Ksha-Daksha Vishnu is entering. So when it is said that he has no connection with it, means that he is always independent of the influence of matter. It does not mean that there is a fixed physical difference or there is some kind of an insulation. It's like you can put oil and water in the same glass and they will always stay separate. So that is why he even though he is physically intimately associating with the external energy of the Lord, he always remains aloof. So Garbha-Daksha Vishnu is an expansion of Mahavishnu and is also an expansion of Pradyumna from the second Chaturvyu. We saw that when we looked at the slide for the Chaturvyu incarnations in the material world. So, having entered into the universe, the Lord desired to lie. And seeing that the ocean, that the universe was empty, then from the perspiration of his body, he created the transcendental ocean of water called the Garbhodaka. And this fills the lower half of the universe, a little bit less than the lower half, but generally it is said the lower half of the universe. So the water of the Garbhodaka ocean is considered to be transcendental because it is the perspiration of Lord Vishnu. Just like the causal ocean is the perspiration of Mahavishnu, this is the perspiration of Karbo-Daksha Vishnu. And having created the Garbhodaka ocean, then he laid there on his partial expansion, Lord Shesh, served by his eternal consort, Lakshmi Devi. And it is said that because of this, he is also called Narayan. Because Nar means person, and the transcendental water that is created from him is Nar. And one who lies down, so lying down is Ayan. So one who lies down in Nar. Nar is the water of the causal ocean, Ayan is lying down. So Narayan is one who lies down in the causal ocean. Generally speaking, the terminology is that Narayan refers to Krishna in the spiritual world, especially in Vaikuntha. And within the material world, Vishnu is used. But the Bhagavatam also says that his name is also Narayan. And because they're all the same personality. just doing different pastimes. So Karbo-Daksha Vishnu okay, I thought okay, then Karbo-Daksha Vishnu, he creates or he expands into Shudaksha Vishnu from his left limb. He expands into Brahma from his right limb. And from the space between his eyebrows, Shambhu, the divine masculine manifested halo, appears. Now it's important to note that this Brahma is not the Brahma who will do the creation. This is the Adideva. He is a Shakti Tattva. And he is the source of the Brahma who will be born on the lotus flower later on. Similarly, the Shambhu that is appearing is different from the Rudras who will later also appear from the space, but from the space between the eyes of Brahma. So this Shiva is again an Adideva, and he is the cause of the Rudras who will appear later on. So Bhakti Siddhanta says about Brahma that the same Hiranyagarbha is the principle of creative energy of every Brahma, belonging to each of the infinity of universes. So the point is that this is the Adideva, and from him, infinite Brahmas will appear in the infinite universes. And in 517, he says that the consort of the Adi Brahma is Savitri Devi. Generally, the consort of the Chaturmukhi Brahma is considered to be Saraswati Devi. Now, the Shudaksha Vishnu is, of course, the third Purush incarnation. So, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's mentioned that one who knows these three Purush avatars, Mahavishnu, or Karno-Daksha Vishnu, Garbho-Daksha Vishnu, Shudaksha Vishnu, becomes liberated from the clutches of Maya. Another way of understanding this is that one who understands the process of creation becomes liberated from the clutches of Maya, because the person understands the dependence of the Lord, the supremacy of the Lord. The person also understands the construction of the prison. It's like there is a person in the prison and somebody comes and gives the person the architecture design, that this is how this prison was constructed. There's a door over here, there's a lock over here, there's a button over here to open this lock. So that is why this whole process of creation is explained so many times. In the Bhagavatam, second canto, third canto, so many times it's explained. Chaitanya Charitamrita is explained. Brahma Samhita is explained. Not just because it satisfies some idle intellectual curiosity, but because of this reason. And one who understands it begins to appreciate the greatness of Krishna, the kindness of Krishna, and also understands how to be relieved of this imprisonment. So Shudaksha Vishnu, he lies in the ocean of milk. That's why it's called Kshira Sagar. That's why he's also called Kshirodaksha Vishnu. And his consort Lakshmi Devi is an expansion of Rama Devi, the consort of Mahavishnu. So his abode is in Dhruvaloka. And it is it is considered to be spiritual. So even before anything is created, the abode of Shodaksha Vishnu is created. That is why Dhruva Lok is, even though just in terms of the physical placement, Dhruva Loka is above the Svarg Lok and below Mahar Lok. Satyalok is still higher up, but Dhruva Lok is still considered to be higher because it is eternal. Even when Satyalok is destroyed, the abode of Lord Vishnu does not get destroyed. So within the Shir Sagar, Shodaksha Vishnu resides in an island called Svetadri. Now, we had discussed this when we were talking about the construction of the spiritual world, that the Golok is also called Svetadri. But the two are different. That is in spiritual Golok, and this is in each and every Brahman. And Shodaksha Vishnu also is the source of the Paramatma that will enter into each and every living entity's heart. So next step is the appearance of the Virat Purush. So after having created, or after having expanded into Shodaksha Vishnu, manifested Adi Brahma and Shambhu, Karbo-Daksha Vishnu, he lies down in Yoga Nidra for 1000 cycles of 4 yugas. So essentially this is one kalpa, one day of Brahma. He lies in Yoga Nidra. Then he awakes from this Yoga Nidra, and then he simultaneously enters into the 23 elements. Now this is where I mentioned that in the Mahatattva we said 24 elements, now we are saying 23, but the counting is a little different. So where we said that in the Mahatattva we had mind, intelligence, false ego and chitta as the 4 antakarans. Here we say mind, false ego and Mahatattva. So mind is common, but and false ego is common, but intelligence and chitta, they are replaced by Mahatattva here. Now, along with this is time, because time had entered, right? With the glance of Mahavishnu, time had entered. So, along with this is existing time. So, at this point, the Lord, he transforms into a gigantic form of which all the universe is a part. And this form is known as the Virat Purush or the Vishwarupa. Okay, so sequence says Brahman created, the egg lies in a passive state for 1000 years. Then Mahavishnu expands to Karbo-Daksha Vishnu, enters there, creates the Garbhodaka ocean, lies over there, creates Adi Brahma, Adi Shiva, Shodaksha Vishnu. Then for one kalpa, he lies in Yoga Nidra, and now he expands into the Virat Purush. So that is why the Virat Purush is considered to be non-different from the Lord, because he is a direct expansion of Karbo-Daksha Vishnu. So he is called as the first incarnation and plenary portion of Karbo-Daksha Vishnu. So the Lord has now manifested the Virat Purush, and in him also rests the aggregate creation. So the Virat Purush is probably one of the more difficult things to understand, but conceptually, the Virat Purush is now has now taken these 23 elements that the Lord had energized, and he has manifested what can be considered as the blueprint of the universe. So Virat Purush carries the information needed by Brahma for the secondary creation, and he also creates the 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 infrastructure. He creates the materials also. So not only does he, so the blueprint is like, how do you connect point A to point B? And you run a wire from here, you run a rod over here. So he not only has a blueprint, but he also has the rod and the wire and the screws and the boxes. So the Virat Purush contains all this information. And the Virat Purush is also the cause of the elements performing their function. So because of the presence of the Virat Purush, earth has aroma. Because of his presence, earth has the qualities that are unique to earth. So even though the elements had already been created, but when they will enter into this material universe, they will behave in a certain way, interact with each others because of the Virat Purush. Now, when the Virat Purush appeared, then for 1,000 celestial years, he lay within the water of the Karbo-Daksha, Vishnu. And the Jivas lay in the body of Karbo-Daksha, Vishnu. So the Virat Purush is described many, many times. It's described 3 times in the 2nd canto, another 2 times in the 3rd canto. Again, it's defined in the 11th canto. And each time the description is a little different. This is because there are 3 possible ways that the Virat Purush can be perceived. So the first is called Dharna Ashraea. So this is the imaginary form. And this is described to help the materialists see the Lord, or for the yogis to meditate. So in Dharna Ashraea, we will see a description like the knees of the universal form are the planetary system called Sutal, his thighs are Vital, the hips are Mahatal, and then we'll see descriptions like modesty is his upper portion of limbs, hankering is his lower, his back, Brahma is his genitals, etc., etc. So these are all imaginary, but because these are things that a materialist can relate to, they are described in the context of the Virat Purush. They think of the upper portion of the lips of the Virat Purush to be modesty, or think that the planetary systems are distributed over the body of the Virat Root. And essentially, this is for it's like Krishna in the 10th chapter saying that amongst the cheats I am gamblers, and amongst priests I'm Brahaspati, amongst the learned I'm Shukracharya. So Krishna is not Brahaspati, he's not Shukracharya, they're all Jivas. Krishna is definitely not the gambler. But the point that he's trying to make is that if you look at the king amongst the people and know that he is the leader, he is the most qualified leader, then you can think of me in that perspective, right? So these are just anchors, but they're completely imaginary. The second description of the Virat Purush is conceptual reality. So this is the description that tends to show how does the Virat Purush actually sustain the universe. So this is real. This is not imaginary, but it is conceptual because it is explaining things that are very, very subtle by using analogies, by indirect references. So it's kind of like the Chandrashak Nyaya. that the mother tells the child, uh, if you look at the tree, there is a branch over there, and the child says, yes, I see the branch, and then say, you go further, see the branch, I see the another branch. Now you see perched on that branch is moon. I said, okay, now I see the moon. Now it does not mean that the moon grows from the branch of the tree. It's just a referential existence. But the tree is real and the moon is real. The explanation is to aid the understanding of the person. And in this example, we see that the description of the energies of the Virat Purush, the 3, 10, and 1, we'll see this in a subsequent slide. That how is it that the Virat Purush energizes the universe? How is he sustaining the different forms in the universe? How are the senses generated? So this is the description of the universal form by which the universe functions. Now there is a third description of the universal form, which is an experiential form. So this is the form that is observed, a form that is revealed by Krishna on various occasions. So like when Mother Yashoda once looked into the mouth of Krishna and she saw the universal form, or the famous Kala Roop and Vishwa Roop that Krishna showed Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Or there are other universal forms that are meant to inspire awe and reverence, like when Krishna was attacked by Duryodhana and his soldiers, then he displays the partial universal form that completely stuns them. So these are forms that Krishna reveals. And they're just that. They're interaction between Krishna and a particular devotee for some pastime. When he revealed the universal form to Mother Yashoda, he wanted to make this point that his pure devotees, they, even if they see him in the most opulent form, in the most awe-inspiring form, it does not cover their bhakti. So Mother Yashoda saw it, she shook herself, and then she said, she put a finger inside his mouth and said, take the mud out. So didn't do anything to her. That there is the whole universe in his mouth. When Arjun saw it, he was awestruck. He started rendering prayers, and then he says, please withdraw it. When Duryodhana saw it, he became scared and ran away. So this is whatever Krishna decides to show. The point is that neither of the above forms, three forms, imaginary, conceptual, or perceived, described from the material angle of the vision, is accepted by the pure devotees of the Lord who know him well. So accepted in the sense, it's not that they reject it, but they do not accept it as their object of worship. So they may look upon it from the perspective of glorifying Krishna, which is what Sukadeva Goswami is doing, but you will not see Sukadeva Goswami rendering prayers to the universal form or any prayers composed by devotees to glorify the universal form. Srila Prabhupada sometimes speaks strongly about it, that devotees are not attracted to the universal form, which is just energy. So now that the Virat Purush has been lying for 1,000 years, he begins to develop further. So this is the conceptual reality that I was talking about, that the Virat Purush manifests as the energy. So from him comes Jiva Shakti, the consciousness, that is the one. From him comes the Prana Shakti, which is the 10 life pairs, and then the 3 Atma Shaktis. So the 1, 10, and 3. So the Atma Shakti is Adhyatma, Adhibhuta, and Adhideva, the senses, the gross sense organs and sense objects, and and the demigods. Then at some point of time, from the ether in the body arose the senses, mind, and body of the Virat Purush. And this is essentially an expansion of the Sutra Tattva. So you remember when we talked about the influence of the mode of passion on the Pradhan, the Sutra Tattva comes. And the Sutra Tattva is the one that actually is the cause of this pran, which is different. So this pran over here is different from this pran. This pran is just the life energy. It's there in the, all these airs, pran, apan, saman, udan, they are in our bodies. And they are essentially helping the functioning of the body. This pran is very subtle. This is the pran that is a subtle form of ojas, sahas, and balam. And this pran is coming from the Sutra Tattva. Now, because of the presence of this pran, the Virat Purush also becomes activated and he arises. So he was so far sleeping. So now the Virat Purush is developing desires. So and this is just one example. Because he desired to see, eyes appeared in the body of the Virat Purush. And when the eyes appeared in the Virat Purush, vision appeared. When the vision appeared, the deity of sight, Surya Dev, appears. Now this Surya Dev is the same Adideva that was created as part of the Mahatattva. But the Virat Purush is now stitching them all together into something that will be the functioning basis of the universe. Now, because there is vision, form appears. And from form, fire appears. And we have seen that all this essentially is dependent on Krishna. Because Krishna sees, there is fire and form, and because Krishna has eyes, there is vision and the deity of sight. So even though they're appearing from Virat Purush, actually they're dependent on Krishna. Now, why are these things appearing here? The reason that they're appearing is that the Virat Purush is creating the environment by which the conditioned jivas can interact with matter. Because we mentioned earlier that the jivas have no way to interact with matter. Their spirit, matter is matter. But because they're coming into this universe to enjoy matter, Krishna is creating the necessary environment for them to enjoy the connections for them. So because of these four things is the spirit soul able to interact with matter. That because they have Gyanendriyas, so because you have an eye, you can see form. And because there is form, there is the element of fire that reveals form. And then there is the Deva who is making it possible. Because of the presence of the Deva sits in the eye. And because of his presence, the eye can see the form illuminated by fire. So all these arrangements are being made so that the spiritual world, Jiva, can interact with the material world. And this is just the other development. We obviously won't go to it, but we looked at the eyes, similarly the mouth, the nostrils. So they all, by the desire of the Virat Purush, the gross organs appeared, then the subtle senses appeared, the controlling deity appeared, and the activities related to it appeared. So now the Virat Purush, he has developed. Prabhupada compares it with the developing of the embryo in the womb of the mother. So he said the Virat Purush was lying within Garbha-Daksha ocean in the womb of Lord Vishnu, and he was gradually developing. By his desires, he was developing these senses. And so we saw that by the desire of the Virat Purush, first the gross sense organ. When he wanted to see, the eye appeared. When the eye appeared, then sight appeared and Suryadev appeared. And when sight and Suryadev appeared, then the light and fire appeared. So in this way, the stitching together of the sense, the object of the sense, and the ability and the presiding deity is being happening within the Virat Purusha. So even though all these senses had appeared, the Virat Purush still remains inactive. Now all these demigods and the presiding deities of the various senses, they wanted to wake the Virat Purush. And they kept trying to wake, but they failed. And upon failing to do so, they entered back into the body of the Virat Purush in their respective apertures. Suryadev entered into the eye, Digdevtas entered into the ear. So even though they entered into the respective organs, still the Virat Purush refused to get up. However, when the deity of consciousness, which is Lord Vasudev, he entered the heart of the Virat Purush became energized. And now he arose from, it says causal waters here, but these are not the Karna Sagar. These are the causal waters within the material universe, the Brahman. So these are pointing to the waters of the Garbha-Daksha ocean. So this is this is kind of the end of the Virat Purusha. I'm thinking I'll take a break over here and see if there's any discussion. And yeah, we'll take a break here and see if there's any questions or comments.
Hare Krishna. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. May I ask a question? So Virat Purush, is he transcendental? Is he like eternal?
So I guess you asked for two qualities that are a little different. So the answer to if he's transcendental is yes, because he is a direct, he's called a plenary portion of Lord Vishnu. So that makes him transcendental, but he's not eternal, because we see that he has appeared now. And when the universe ends, he disappears with that. So he is temporary.
What about Garbha-Daksha Vishnu and Kshira-Daksha Vishnu? They are also transcendental, but they are not eternal? Or are they eternal as well?
It's a good question. It's not clearly indicated. So what happens to Karbo-Daksha Vishnu when the universes are destroyed? I haven't read about it. I heard in one of the discussions that Karbo-Daksha Vishnu has his own abode that is spiritual, and he resides over there even after the destruction. Same for Shiva-Daksha Vishnu, that they reside over there when the universes are destroyed. But I will not be able to give you any references, because like I said, I haven't read about it anywhere.
Okay, then I have one more question. Did I understand correctly that Garbha-Daksha Vishnu is the manifestation of both Mahavishnu and Aniruddha, or did I mix something?
Pradyumna.
Pradyumna, I'm sorry. Yes, so how can one personality be manifestation of two personalities? I do not understand this.
So one way to understand it is that so we say that now essentially the two personalities we are talking about are non-different from one another, right? There's no difference between Pradyumna and Mahavishnu. Mahavishnu is an expansion of Sankarshan, so they are all the same. But if we were to go into specifics, one way to understand it is that Lord Pradyumna, from the second Chaturvyuha, he expands through Karno-Daksha Vishnu and becomes Garbo-Daksha Vishnu. It's like the king entering into the city, the emperor entering into the city with the permission of the king. So Mahavishnu, he is the supreme proprietor of the material world. Lord Pradyumna, he exists in Vaikuntha. So when Lord Pradyumna is coming down as Karbo-Daksha Vishnu, then he's coming through Mahavishnu. He comes to Mahavishnu and says, okay, time for me to, and this I'm making up, but something like that. He says, time for me to help out in the creation of the individual universe. Mahavishnu says, all glories to you, please go ahead. So through Mahavishnu, Pradyumna expands into Garbo-Daksha Vishnu.
Okay, and the last one. So, do I understand correctly that Shiva, Lord Shiva, as the personified time, is more primeval than Kshirodakashaya Vishnu? He manifests before him, or
so
not?
it depends on which Shiva are you talking about. So there is a Shambhu that manifested from Mahavishnu. Right at the beginning of even before the Mahatattva, there is a Shambhu that manifests, who is an expansion of Sadashiv. Right? And yes, I think if you look at it from a time perspective, he manifests before him. It does not mean that he's more primeval, because we are talking about beings that are all eternal. So even we are eternal. Krishna is not more primeval than we are. Right? We are also eternal. Krishna is also eternal. But in this particular sequence of events, if you're talking about the Shambhu who manifests at the beginning of Pradhan, yes, he manifests before Garbo-Daksha Vishnu.
Okay, thank you very much for the answers.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Prabhu. So my one question was what Gayatri Mataji already asked. So, but the other question that I had was this one, that we also hear some places that this Virat Rupa is imaginary. I think some places in second canto it speaks like that. Srila Prabhupada writes like that.
So what's your question?
That like some places it also says that Virat Rupa is imaginary.
Did you join the class?
No, Prabhu.
Oh,
I may have missed some part. Like I joined, but I might have been inattentive at some place.
Oh, okay, because this is exactly what I covered, right? There
Sorry.
are three ways to understand the Virat. Maybe you should mute.
Yes, Prabhu.
So I said that there are three ways that the Virat Purush is conceived. One is the imaginary form, which is used for the materialist to meditate on the. So it's called trying to find spirit within matter. That's the imaginary form of the Virat Purush. That the planets are his body, the Brahmans are his face, and the rivers are his veins, the trees are the hair on his body. So that's the imaginary form. That is the Dharna Ashraea. And then the second is the conceptual form, which mostly we discuss here, that how the Virat Purush is enabling the elements to manifest and interact with one another. And the third is the experience form, the form that is seen by Krishna, by Arjun or Yashoda Mai. So that's why sometimes Prabhupada will say the Virat Purush is imaginary. Then he's referring to Dharna Ashraea. Sometimes he will say the Virat Purush is real but temporary. Then he's talking about the conceptual form. And sometimes he will say the Virat Purush is the mercy of the Lord. Then he's talking about the revealed form of the Virat Purush. Just depends on the context in which he's making the statement.
So Prabhuji, that means that in truth, actually, Virat Rupa is the expansion, but just for the purpose of different perspective of it, the different like imaginary and this and that, like three ways it is explained. Right. Is it? Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu.
That's good. It's like Krishna is real, but then for the materialist, he says, you think of me as a taste of water. You think of me as intelligence and mind. You think of me as Indra and Brahaspati, right? So it's not that Krishna is all this. It's not that Krishna is the taste of water, but he says you can think of me like that. So that's the imaginary form. You can imagine of me in this form.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, just a clarification. In the beginning of the lecture, I think the first one, you said that like if we take Krishna, then it has different expansion. And then when, Balaram, Sankarshan, Aniruddha and all that, they all have the same potency, but it's as if like you took the example of, I think, the magistrate in the court. He is like, he's a judge, and in his village he's something, or in his city something, and at home he's a father. That means he's the same person, have different role at different time. And according to what I understand, is the same Krishna expand himself, but in the same question as Gayatri said that about the primeval, there's no primeval because Krishna is Krishna, but there are different successive form of Krishna that is doing different role at different time. Is this the right understanding, Prabhu?
Absolutely, that is the right. I couldn't have explained it better myself. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay, so let's proceed. Okay. So now we come to the second glance. So the first glance was the glance of Mahavishnu on Pradhan. The second glance is the glance of Karbo-Daksha Vishnu on the Jivas. So the Jivas that are still held in Shushupti, in suspended animation, within the body of Karbo-Daksha Vishnu, now he acknowledges that they all have so many desires to perform fruitive activities. And so, acknowledging those desires, he glances. And because of the energy of his glance, the time factor, the Jivas, and Karbo-Daksha Vishnu also enters carrying a portion of the Mahatattva, matter with him. Because so far the universe just has the outer shells, inside it is empty. So he also comes with all the matter that is needed to create the planets and everything else within that universe. So agitated by the glance of Karbo-Daksha Vishnu, all this thing, it emanates in the form of a lotus flower. And the lotus flower, it contains the sum total form of fruitive activities. So the same karma that was present in the glance of Mahavishnu has now appeared in the lotus flower. And when that lotus flower appears by the will of Karbo-Daksha Vishnu, then the vast waters of devastation are dried. So this we have to take a little bit I guess, in context, because this process is also repeated. So what we're talking about is the first creation of the universe. But this process of the lotus appearing can also get repeated in subsequent creations within the universe. So the waters of devastation that had destroyed the previous creation are dried up. So for the sake of conciseness, both of these are mentioned together. So the lotus flower is a reservoir of all the conditioned souls. They are said to reside in the stem of the lotus flower and also all the planets within the universe. So Garbo-Daksha Vishnu, he enters into the lotus flower as the super soul. And because of it being actuated by the energy of Lord Vishnu, Lord Brahma appears. So this is our Chaturmukhi Brahma, who has now appeared. This is the Brahma that will take forward the process of creation. So the appearance of Lord Brahma is still a part of Sarga. So Brahma has three forms. So he is considered to be, his body is considered to be the universe. So the gross universal form of the 14th planetary system is also considered to be the body of Brahma. So he is called Vairajya. He is also called Hiranyagarbha. So I mentioned that even though we sometimes call Garbo-Daksha Vishnu Hiranyagarbha, Brahma is also called Hiranyagarbha. So this is the Samasti Virat, the sum total of all the Jivas. And he is also the individual Jiva, the person, the Chaturmukhi Brahma, who is appearing on the top of the universe. And this is in addition to the Adi Brahma, who had appeared from Garbo-Daksha Vishnu right when he had entered into the Brahma. So we will see Brahma referred by different names or with different functions, but essentially same personality is being taught. And he lives in Satyalok, right? Brahmalok as a topmost planet. So with this, Sarga ends. So summation of Sarga, there are 6 stages of Sarga. We have the appearance of Mahatattva. Then we have Mahatattva in the mode of Tamo becoming Ahankar. Then Ahankar in the mode of Tamo becoming the Tanmatras and the Panchamahabhutas. So we have discussed these transformations. Then Ahankar in Rajas becoming the Gyan and Karmendriyas, the knowledge and working capacity. And Ahankar in the mode of Sattvas becoming the Adidevas and the mind. And these Adidevas become the template from which the later Devas will appear. And the 6th stage of creation in Sarga is Avidya. Now, Avidya is not discussed that much in Sarga because Avidya is the junction between Sarga and Visarga, between the primary and the secondary creation. So even though Avidya is a part of Sarga, it is typically discussed in Visarga for 2 reasons. One, that while it is created in Sarga, it is manifested in Visarga. So the effect of Avidya is only felt in Visarga. It is the first thing that Brahma does as part of Visarga. But Brahma does not create Avidya. He manifests the Avidya that has been created by the Lord as part of Sarga. So important to remember this because this will be our handoff to the Visarga. So what is the purpose of creation? Now that we have ended Sarga, and we are at a logical break. So it makes sense to take a step back and see that why is all this happening? So all this is happening because of the Bahirmukhi Jiva. So Bahirmukhi Jiva is Bahirmukhi means looking away. So those spirit souls who are rebellious, who are looking away from Krishna. All this is being done only for them and nobody else. And essentially what is happening over here? That three things are happening. The place for the residence is being established because this jiva, he cannot live in the spiritual world anymore because he doesn't want to live it there. He actually hates it over there. So he doesn't want to live in the spiritual world. So another place of residence has to be created for him. So that's one thing. Then he needs to be given a body to enjoy in the material world. Because that's what his desire is, that he wants to desire separately from Krishna. As a spirit soul, he cannot enjoy in the material world. So he needs to be given a body that will facilitate his enjoyment in the material world. And the third thing is that an environment for him to enjoy has to be created. The facilities for his enjoyment have to be created. So these are the three things that are happening as part of the material creation. So the place of material residence is the creation of all the planets. And this is being done from the Panchamahabhutas. So now we can tie it back to the transformations in the Pradhan and the Mahatattva. That why are the 5 gross elements created? They're created so that the planets can be created. The planets are created so that the place of residence for the Bahirmukhi Jiva is established. Then, in order to give him a body for enjoyment, he gets a gross and subtle body. So this is in addition to the 5 gross elements which make his gross body, he gets the 10 senses, the mind, intelligence, and false ego. So because of this, he is now able to, because of this, he is able to enjoy this now. But still, he is not able to interact directly. He has a body, he has senses. These are the object of his enjoyment. Now, in order to bridge this, these facilities for enjoyment has been created. So the tanmatras are created. The subtle aspect of these 5 gross elements are created, and the sense devas are there. The sense devas are those who are going to be enabling the senses to interact with the subtle qualities of the gross elements. It is the sense devas who allow the nose to smell the fragrance of the rose. Right? So there is rose, and the rose has fragrance. And because there is fragrance, there is the sense to perceive that fragrance. But that is not enough. All this is brought together by the devas who are presiding. There are people who have completely normal eyes, but they cannot see because the presiding deity has not given them the facility to see. So with this, we come to the end of Sarga. Next time, which should be the concluding session, we will discuss Visarga and do the summation, which is we'll talk about stitching everything together and in a more concise way. So we have maybe about 5 or 6 minutes, maybe a little bit more. So any questions that you have on this or any of the previous discussions that we had, please feel free to ask, or any comments, any realizations you have, please feel free to share.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you for the nice, wonderful Sarga class. One thing that is not very clear to me is, first you mentioned that Pradhan coming into contact with mode of goodness produces Mahatattva, and then towards the end you said Mahatattva is predominated by the mode of ignorance. So how to understand this? Am I right in saying that?
You are right. So if you look at why is there an echo? Maybe Nangopal Prabhu, if you mute yourself, the echo might go away. Thank you. For some reason, this echo is coming. So yes, technically, the Pradhan in the mode of goodness is Mahatattva, in the mode of passion is Sutra Tattva, and in the mode of ignorance is Ahankar. But Ahankar is also referred to as Mahatattva because, so if you look at it this way, that you have an apple and one part of the apple is sweet, one part of the apple is a little sour, and the rest of the apple is rotten. So the sweet and the sour part are very narrow slices. So you take the sweet part out, you take the sour part out, and the rest of the apple, which is 99% of the apple, is essentially Ahankar. But because it also represents the majority of the Pradhan, because Prabhupada says Pradhan is predominantly in the mode of ignorance. So when this differentiation happens, predominantly the Pradhan becomes Ahankar. And for that reason, it is called Mahatattva. Or it is also called Mahatattva. It is also called Prakriti because of that reason. So sometimes the names are a little confusing. That's why when the name is given, then important to see that what is the context in which that name is appearing. Now, the second thing is that the Mahatattva, which is Pradhan in the mode of goodness, and the Sutra Tattva, which is Pradhan in the mode of passion, are very rarely discussed. You will find very few references to them. Most of the discussion, for obvious reasons, because it is the Ahankar that basically essentially becomes the basis of all the subsequent creation. So it is for that reason there is not much references made to the mode of goodness and passion. And essentially it is said Pradhan becomes Mahatattva, which is essentially Pradhan that is continuing with the process of creation. Now we know that the Sutra Tattva will manifest as prana, and we also know that the Mahatattva will manifest as chitta. But again, these are very, very limited references.
And so one follow-up question, Prabhu, on that. So now we understand that Mahatattva is predominated by the Ahankara, mode of ignorance. So in that case, we also say that there is mode of goodness, mode of passion, and mode of ignorance. So these three modes refers to the same in that ignorance refers to the same ignorance that we are talking about.
Absolutely. So these three modes are subsequent actions on the Ahankar. Right. So Ahankar is Pradhan in Tamogun, and when that Ahankar is subsequently further acted upon by the modes, then in the mode of goodness it becomes Gyan Shakti, mode of passion it becomes Kriya Shakti, mode of ignorance it becomes Dravya Shakti. But these are subsequent actions on the Pradhan, which has been acted in the mode of ignorance.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. One comment, Prabhuji, like The classes are, especially the summary classes that you're given, are very beautiful and wonderful, Prabhuji. Like so many concepts which are, I understood now that how vague I have, still lot to understand. But there are so many things that are clarified, like the role of Lord Shiva. Initially, it is more because of the faith on devotees we accept, but we are now little bit more clear. Uh, so no doubt also is coming why Krishna is Supreme Lord. And also the material creation, how so much work is done for our benefit, even though it is so-called sense enjoyment. So we feel sometimes karma, but still even that is also mercy of Lord. I'm feeling whatever we get is because of Krishna's mercy. So that is also very touching point for me. So thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna again. I wanted to ask you something about what you said in the second lecture. You said that in Goloka, Krishna is served by millions of Lakshmis, and then you added that they are not really Lakshmis, but they are those who become Lakshmis. So do I understand correctly that there are some gopis who manifest as Lakshmis in different universes?
No, in Vaikuntha. So the gopis that are there in Goloka, they expand into, just like Krishna expands into Lord Narayan, and there are millions of Lord Narayan, then Srimati Radharani and the gopis, they expand into various Lakshmis. Like we have this example of Krishna in Vrindavan and Krishna in Dwarka. So Krishna in Vrindavan is with Radharani and Lalita and Satyabhama. He has 8 primary gopis. And when Krishna goes to Dwarka, then he is Dwarkadhish. He's Vishnu. And his 8 principal queens are expansion of the Ashtagopis. So Satyabhama is an expansion of Radharani. Rukmini is an expansion of Chandravali. So that way we understand that the gopis and Golok, they expand into Lakshmis and Vaikuntha.
Thank you very much. And one more question. Well, you said that gopis who were dancing with Krishna, they were actually never married. They just had some feeling that someone was waiting for them at home. However, there is a perception, I think in the entire India, and I also heard some of the teachers in ISKCON, they were saying that Krishna was actually dancing with gopis who were married. So I wanted to ask you, from where does this false conception that gopis were married, where does it come from? Is it written somewhere? Why does the entire world has this conception that the gopis who were dancing with Krishna, they were married? And who also introduces this conception that they were not married?
So that statement that I made was to make the distinction between Golok in the spiritual world and Golok, which is commonly known as Gokula in the material world. So when Krishna is there in the spiritual world and Golok, then the gopis are not married. There are no demons. There's no Kamsa there. They have this sense. They have this sense of the Parakriya Bhav, but there's no husband there. However, when Krishna is doing his Leela in Gokul, in the manifest Gokul, which is considered to be non-different from Golok, but there are some differences. So the gopis in Gokul, they are married. They are just like the demons are real. In Golok, there are no demons, but there is a sense that Aristasura has come, or like Kaliya has come. So there is that sense, but there's no demon, because there can't be any demons in the spiritual world. But in the manifest Gokul, there is actually a Kalya. Arishtasur actually comes, and Kesi actually comes and kicks Krishna. So these are some of the differences between the two, but otherwise, the two places are considered to be identical. And you were asking where it is said. So if you read Brihad Bhagavatamrita, these things are explained over there. If you read Krishna Sangiti by Sivaraj Swami, he explains this in fair amount of details. Slightly esoteric, I didn't want to dwell too much on it, but because we were talking about the difference between Bhaumya and spiritual, I brought this point now. But yes, they're discussed in the dealings, in the writings of many acharyas.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Prabhu, is it okay if I would like to know whether there's a right realization. I would like your input. So when we say the material and the spiritual both come from the same source, Krishna. So Prabhupada often would say that there is nothing material, everything is spiritual. Only what makes material is our consciousness of trying to enjoy independently of Krishna. That's what makes it material. Otherwise, everything is spiritual in that sense. So in one of the things that I was thinking is, in our case, we see something is spiritual, something is material because of the tendency to enjoy independently of Krishna. But in Krishna's case, there is no such necessity for him. So therefore, he is never touched by materialism. So he is always only one thing, that is spiritual for him. Everything is spiritual for him. There is nothing like material and spiritual for him. So is that a right realization, or is it something that I am concocting?
So you're saying that there is nothing material for Krishna because Krishna does not try to enjoy it separately from Krishna.
No, we have that what call opportunity or the propensity. Whereas for Krishna, that propensity, he is a supreme enjoyer. He has no such separate intention, which is false.
That's a valid point, because if you keep material and spiritual aside, the main fault in the mentality of the conditioned jiva is to try and establish proprietorship over something that does not belong to him. That's the main fault, right? The first verse in the Isa Upanishad that establishes the fault, the Ishavashyam idam sarvam yakanchi jagatam jagat. Right? If you think that everything belongs to Krishna, then you're in the spiritual conception. Now, in case of Krishna, everything does belong to him, right? So if I come to your house and then I start saying that this room is mine and this car is mine, it's like stealing. It's being presumptive. But it's your house. If you say this room is mine, this car is mine, there's no stealing there because they do belong to you. So material, spiritual, jiva, tathast, everything belongs to Krishna, right? So when he tries to enjoy with it, he is enjoying in his constitutional position. However, when we try to enjoy, then we are encroaching on Krishna. Now, it's not that Krishna says do not enjoy, right? So if I come to your house, you might say very well that Prabhu, fine, you can take my car and you can go somewhere, right? Then I take your car, it's fine. It's with your permission, your blessing. So, but then I'm acknowledging the fact that the car is yours and you're giving me permission to use it. So same way, it's not that Krishna has created all this and he's saying that it's mine, 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 nobody else touch it. I'll beat up anybody else who touches it, right? It's not that. But all that is being asked for us is to acknowledge that he's the proprietor, and when we use it with his permission in the way that we are supposed to use it.
I was trying to say that when whenever we talk, Krishna is never touched by material, is never touched by material nature. So I was trying to explain in this way that we just spoke that because there is nothing material for Krishna, everything is from him, so everything is belong to him.
Yes.
Whereas that's what I was.
Yes, absolutely. That is a valid understanding too. Sorry, I didn't get it the first time, but yes, because and even factually speaking, when we look at Visarga, then the point is made that only Avidya is a creation of this world. Everything else is coming from Krishna. The so-called matter, earth, water, fire, air, ether, is there in the spiritual world also. The devas are there in the spiritual world. The senses are there. The object of the senses are there. Everything is there in the spiritual world. But the only thing that is unique to the material world is avidya, and that is something that is not there in the spiritual world.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, just a comment on that is when we understand also that the pure devotees, even though they are in this material world, but they are living in the spiritual world.
That is correct, because they have their mentality is what is it that Prabhupada would say? They have Vaikuntha consciousness, right? So they are not looking upon matter as something for themselves for them to exploit. Like they're looking at matter and saying this is connected to Krishna. At that point, it stops being matter. It becomes spiritual. Right? The classic example is given now as offering bhoga. That bhoga is prepared by killing living entities. Right? Even if you're doing vegetarian, we're still killing living entities. But it stops being all that when we offer it to Krishna. So the conception now has changed, that this is for you and it has been put here for your pleasure. After you enjoy it with your permission, we will partake of it. Right? So then it becomes prasad after that.
Yes, and then one more thing is even their body, their body goes into samadhi because their body even is spiritual. Huh?
Yes, same conception, because they use their body in the service of Krishna, so that's why it's not burnt. It's considered to be spiritual, so that's why it's entombed in samadhi. Okay, so
Thank you, Prabhu.
We are a bit over time. We'll stop here. So next discussion we will conclude. We will speak about Visarga, the secondary creation, and we will also do the summation. Hopefully, we'll have some time for discussion also on everything that we have done. So thank you very much for patiently participating in it. Thank you for all the wonderful questions. Vanchakalpatarubhayaschet kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thai Gaur Premanand. Hare Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhu, for wonderful class.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.